If you think social class in the 21st century is just about how much money you make, you are missing, probably 80% of the
Oh,
story.
absolutely.
If you ever felt judged for the music you listen to, the car you drive, or, whether you prefer a symphony over a stadium concert, you instinctively get it. Class is way more than a tax bracket.
It's true. We're sort of conditioned to see social hierarchy as this simple vertical ladder. You've got poor, middle class, rich. But our sources today, which are, I should say, an intense empirical critique of all this, they argue that model is just fatally flawed.
How so?
If you reduce class to just one thing, like income, you completely destroy the crucial structure of society. You lose all the nuance.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is to get our heads around a pretty groundbreaking model, one that sees social hierarchy not as a single line, but as a complex, multidimensional space.
Right, and your position in that space dictates everything, from your favorite artist to what you're having for dinner tonight.
So we're going to trace this journey through three key concepts, right? They're all interconnected.
Yes, it starts with capital, which is your objective resources. That capital then generates your habitus.
Which is like your internalized blueprint for life.
Exactly. And the habitus, in turn, dictates your lifestyle. Or, to put it simply, your taste.
And that's the genius of it. It's a closed loop that makes your preferences feel completely natural, totally you, even though they are profoundly shaped by where you stand in this social map.
Precisely.
All right, so let's start with that map. Why is it so important to break away from that simple idea of a social ladder?
Because a single ladder just captures one element. A social class isn't defined by one property. It's what the source calls a constructed class.
Meaning?
It's defined by the structure of relations between all the important properties. So not just capital, but its composition, your education, where you came from socially, your age, your sex. You need a coordinate system, not just a single line going up.
Okay, so a coordinate system needs axes. The vertical axis seems pretty easy to grasp. That's a volume of capital.
Yep. The total amount of resources a person has.
Yeah.
The more you have, the higher up you are in the space. Simple enough.
But the really illuminating part is the horizontal axis.
This is where it gets really interesting. This is the composition of capital. It's the ratio between your economic capital, your money, investments, property, and your cultural capital.
And cultural capital is what? Your education.
It's your educational qualifications, yes, but also your inherited knowledge, your disposition, the way you speak, the art you appreciate. It's all that stuff.
And this creates deep divisions, even among people at the very top.
Absolutely. At the top, there's a fascinating phenomenon called the chiastic structure.
Chiastic.
Yeah, think of it as a huge symmetrical X shape or a split right at the peak of the pyramid. The dominant class is basically divided into two factions that are almost mirror images of each other.
So on one side, you have the people rich in pure economic capital.
Exactly. The industrial and commercial employers, they have high incomes, high profits, but they're often, less rich in formal cultural capital. They might have inherited the business, not a PhD.
And the other side of that X.
That's the opposite pole, the fractions who are rich in cultural capital, but comparatively less wealthy in economic terms. This is your university professors, your artists, your high-level researchers.
They might have 3 degrees and know everything about 19th century poetry.
But they often have pretty low spending on things like expensive cars or fancy food. Their wealth is in their head and on their CV.
So one side has the money, the other has the degrees and the quote-unquote taste. Who's in the safest position then?
The professions, doctors, top-tier lawyers, senior executives, they tend to be well endowed with both. They have the credentials and the direct economic power. They're the most secure.
And we can't ignore those other factors like age and gender. They get shaped by this too.
Oh, completely. The data shows that even the meaning of aging changes based on your class. Among the privileged classes, for instance, there's a general political trend toward moving further to the right as they get older.
Wait. Are you saying that becoming more conservative as you age is a class-specific thing? It's not just a universal rule of getting old?
It isn't, no. The data suggests that among manual workers, the trend is actually countered by a move toward the left as they age.
Wow.
Their class position defines the meaning of their life trajectory, including their politics. It just shows how deeply this map shapes your reality.
Okay, so once your position on that map is set by your capital, that position gets internalized. This is where we get to habitus. It's a heavy academic term, so let's translate it.
Habitus is essentially your internalized GPS. It's the blueprint that guides all your choices, often subconsciously, based on your starting point. It transforms the objective conditions of your life, the necessities or the freedoms, into a distinctive lifestyle.
So it's the engine that produces what you do, and it's also the lens through which you see the world. It's your taste.
It's the whole system of dispositions, and you can see this principle at work, even when you compare groups that look almost identical on paper.
Like the example from the source? Office workers versus commercial employees.
Exactly. Similar income, similar age, similar gender split. You'd think they'd be pretty much the same, but they're not.
The office workers are more ascetic. Is that the right word?
Yeah, more focused on restraint, neatness. They want their friends to be conscientious. They like a neat interior. And their tastes in music and art are more structured, more classical.
Whereas the commercial employees are the bon
The
vivant.
free-spirited types, right. They want friends who are sociable and stylish. They prefer a comfortable, cozy home, and their tastes lean toward more expressive, maybe jazz-influenced artists.
It's such a subtle difference in disposition, but it translates into everything they buy and value.
And nowhere is that clearer than with food. This is where the tastes of necessity and the tastes of luxury have a head-on collision.
For the working class, food is about necessity. It's about substance.
It's about reproducing your ability to work at the lowest cost. So you see a focus on foods that are filling, hearty, economical potatoes, pasta, fatty meats, strong red wine.
But it's not just about money, is it? There's an ethos to it.
It's the ethos of convivial indulgence. It's communal, heavy eating that actively pushes back against the elite's focus on restraint and, calorie counting. It's refusal of that cold Benthamite calculation of pleasure versus cost. It's almost a political statement.
And on the other side,
The dominant class adopts the tastes of luxury. For them, it's about form, lightness, refinement, fresh fruit, lean meats, things that are non-fattening.
it's the new ethic of sobriety for the sake of slimness.
Right. Asceticism becomes a marker of privilege. You can afford to prioritize appearance over just getting enough calories in.
And this boundary runs right through the middle class, doesn't it?
It does. Clerical and commercial workers, even when they earn as much as a factory foreman, they consume less of that heavy, earthy food. They spend more on health, on beauty. The closer you get to that cultural pole, the more your focus shifts from feeding the body for labor to refining it for appearance.
Which brings us to the body itself. We've seen what this does to your dinner plate. Now, how does it shape your actual physical self?
The dominant class invests in what the source calls a body for others. This means a lot of time and money on cosmetics, grooming, and specific sports skiing, tennis, golf.
The ones that require technique and, let's be honest, money.
Yes, and this is especially true for women in professions where conforming to dominant beauty norms is rewarded. The whole ethos is about the conquest of merit, presenting a polished, controlled exterior to avoid being seen as vulgar. It's their symbolic capital made flesh.
And the working class.
They often maintain an instrumental body. The body is valued for its raw strengths, its utility, especially for men.
So the sports they choose reflect that.
Exactly. High energy, high effort, high risk. Boxing, weightlifting, motorcycling. And their clothing is functional blue overalls, a lumberjacket. It's about being overseeming. The source even points to the rejection of things like slippers and dressing gowns,
Huh.
because those are seen as classic bourgeois garments. Rejecting them is a marker against that kind of comfortable domestic life. It's saying, I'm ready for action, not sitting around.
Okay, this brings us to the core of it all. How does this system keep itself going? We're moving from taste to the actual struggle over social reproduction.
And the biggest battleground right now is education. Specifically, the devaluation of academic qualifications.
A diploma used to be like a patent of nobility.
It was. But as more and more people go to school, the scarcity value of those degrees just plummets. They suffer from massive inflation.
So that's why my master's might be worth less today than a high school diploma was 50 years ago, even though it was harder to get.
Precisely. And the really key finding is that the rate of return on your degree depends heavily on the other capital you have to back it up.
The economic and social capital.
Right. Having the degree is one thing. Having the family connections to get the internship or the money to start the business, that's how you cash it in. When the currency is cheap, you need more outside investment to make it valuable.
Some people just refuse to play the game. Right. The source calls it a one-man strike.
Yeah, qualification holders, often from privileged backgrounds, who refuse to sell their labor for the low price on offer. It's a refusal to accept being downclassed.
So what's the elite's defense mechanism? How do they protect their kids from falling down the ladder?
Through what are called reconversion strategies. This is key. when they're children who have all this cultural capital, the good manners, the right accent, the taste, but maybe not the top grades, when they're threatened with downward mobility, they pivot.
They don't go into traditional professions.
They move into new, less defined, more fluid fields. Think PR, digital marketing, social science research, artistic production.
Fields where success isn't just about a test score.
Exactly. It relies less on formal qualifications and more on habitus affinity, on connections, on social graces, on being co-opted because you just fit in.
So they're leveraging their inherited cultural capital, the stuff the school system couldn't quite measure or reward.
It's a way for the bourgeoisie to guarantee its own continuity through style and social networks, not just through straight A's or straight cash.
And the wild thing is the entire cultural world seems set up to support this. There's this pre-established harmony between cultural producers and consumers.
It's a quasi-miraculous correspondence. Cultural producers, who are competing among themselves for their own kind of distinction, end up creating products that just happen to perfectly match the tastes of different class fractions.
The supply and demand are perfectly aligned. The entire market just mirrors the social structure.
And you can see this symbolic warfare play out perfectly in the world of high art, like the theater example.
Right, the play Le Tournant.
Yes, which tried to blend popular comedy with avant-garde ideas. The critical reception wasn't about the play itself. It was a battle over whose habitus, whose taste, was going to be seen as legitimate.
So the right bank critics, representing the economic elite, they loved it.
Unconditional approval.
Yeah.
They praised its technical skill, joie de vivre, clarity, ease. It affirmed their belief in cheerful, accessible art.
But the left bank critics, the intellectuals and academics,
Responded with pure disdain, or even better, silence, which is a more powerful weapon. They completely reversed the hierarchy. They called it a plateful of bourgeois cuisine and a first-rate recuperator.
that's symbolic violence right there.
It is. The culturally dominant group uses complexity and difficulty to maintain their distance, to keep things exclusive. They're effectively telling the money people that their wealth doesn't buy them legitimate taste,
And then you have the neutral voice, like Le Monde.
which maintains distance from both sides. They offer this two-tiered analysis, saying the play is only important as a document illustrating the crisis of modern civilization, which, of course, demonstrates their intellectual superiority over the whole squabble.
So after all that, what does this mean for us? We've learned that class is the subjective map that creates a subjective blueprint inside you, your habitus, and that blueprint is constantly being used in these symbolic fights over what's good, what's valuable, what's good taste.
The entire space of lifestyles is just the balance sheet of those struggles. Taste is the practical tool that transforms your economic power into symbolic capital, into legitimacy and distinction. The system reproduces itself not by creating the same amount of wealth for everyone, but by preserving the same structure of differences between different kinds of wealth.
The ultimate struggle, then, it's way more complex than just a fight over who gets the biggest paycheck.
It really is. It's the struggle between these class fractions, not just over how much capital they have, but over the fundamental exchange rate between economic and cultural capital. At any given moment, the real-world value of a high-paying finance job versus, say, a highly selective PhD is being fought over. And that makes you ask, is the real fight today about who gets more cash, or is it a non-stop battle over whether 1 million followers on social media is worth more than a decade of specialized study? That exchange rate is being renegotiated in real time in the choices you make every single day.